The electric meter outside apartment 4B had never spun so fast for a man who was never home. That was the first thing Grandpa Ned noticed when he shuffled past it on his morning walk, that little silver disc whirring like a pinwheel in a hurricane, counting kilowatts for a tenant he hadn't seen in 3 weeks. He pressed his nose close to the glass, squinting through his thick bifocals, and muttered something under his breath that would have made his late wife, Ruth Ann, reach for the soap. Ned Kowalski was 73 years old, a retired electrician from Toledo who had spent 41 years wiring up everything from farmhouses to federal buildings. He now lived in the ground floor unit of the Elmwood Arms, a modest 8-unit apartment building in Columbus, Ohio, where he served as unofficial building superintendent, full-time busybody, and self-appointed guardian of common sense. The property manager, a harried woman named Gloria Peterson, who lived 40 minutes away and communicated primarily through voicemails, trusted Ned to keep an eye on things. She paid him a small monthly stipend and the freedom to tell residents when they were being foolish. He was very good at both. The tenant in 4B was a young man named Marcus Webb, 31, long legs, always dragging a rolling suitcase behind him like a reluctant dog. Marcus worked in pharmaceutical sales, which meant he was on the road more than he was home, 20 days a month, give or take. Ned knew this because Marcus had mentioned it during move-in, and Ned had filed it away the way he filed everything, permanently, without effort, with the quiet satisfaction of a man who understood that information was the true currency of old age. What Ned could not understand, what kept him awake on Tuesday nights and made him snap at the weather forecast, was why, if Marcus Webb was gone 20 days a month, his electricity bill read like he was running a small casino. It started the previous spring, when Gloria called Ned on a Thursday afternoon, her voice carrying that particular strained quality it got when numbers weren't adding up. "Ned, I need you to look into 4B. The utility bill is through the roof. We are talking $300, $350 a month. I called Marcus, and he said he doesn't know why, that he's barely home." "He's barely home," Ned confirmed. "I see him maybe 10 days out of 30, if that." "So where's the electricity going?" Ned had looked up at the ceiling as though he could see through 2 floors and a layer of mid-century plaster directly into Marcus Webb's apartment. "I'll find out," he said, because that was what Ned said. It was practically his catchphrase. He didn't knock on 4B that day. Ned was not a man who rushed. He was a man who observed. He spent the next week paying attention to the faint glow visible under the door of 4B at midnight, to the soft hum that vibrated through the building's old bones during the dead hours, to the way the meter outside spun with a cheerful indifference to human absence. Something in that apartment was running, something that didn't know or didn't care that its owner was 3 states away selling blood pressure medication to cardiologists. The opportunity came on a Wednesday in April. Marcus had left that morning. Ned had watched him from the window, suitcase rattling down the front steps, phone pressed to his ear, cab already idling at the curb. The young man had barely closed the building door behind him before Ned was pulling on his cardigan and heading upstairs with the spare key Gloria kept on a numbered hook in the utility room. He let himself in. The apartment smelled like new carpet and takeout containers and the faint chemical sweetness of an air freshener that had long since run dry. Marcus was tidy in a bachelor sort of way, dishes done, laundry somewhere out of sight, surfaces clear except for a laptop charger snaking across the kitchen counter and a sad little succulent on the windowsill that had seen better decades. Ned stood in the center of the living room and listened. There it was, that hum. He followed it the way he'd followed faults in wiring for 41 years, not with instruments, but with intuition, with the animal alertness of a man who had spent his career learning to hear what walls were saying. It led him past the kitchen, past the bathroom, to the second bedroom that Marcus apparently used as a home office. The door was open. Inside was a desk, a monitor, and Ned counted 4 space heaters arranged in a semicircle around a small terrarium that occupied the entire top of the desk. Inside the terrarium, coiled like a beautiful, expensive problem, was a ball python named Gary. Gary regarded Ned with the flat black patience of a creature that had never once worried about a utility bill. A heat lamp blazed above him. A ceramic heat emitter glowed beside the lamp. The 4 space heaters hummed in devoted chorus. A thermostat probe was taped inside the enclosure, wired to a controller that Ned could see was set to maintain 95 degrees Fahrenheit on the warm side. The whole setup, Ned estimated with the ease of a professional, was pulling somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 watts every single hour of every single day, regardless of whether Marcus Webb was in Columbus or Charlotte or Calgary. Ned looked at Gary. Gary did not blink. Gary did not feel things like embarrassment. "Son," Ned said to the snake, despite being fully aware that Gary could neither hear him nor appreciate the gravity of the situation, "you are the most expensive roommate in this building." He called Gloria that afternoon. "It's a snake," he said. A pause. "I'm sorry." In 4B, Marcus has a ball python, calls it Gary, running 4 space heaters and 2 heat lamps 24 hours a day to keep it warm. That's your electricity. That's your $350 a month. Another pause, longer this time, the kind that contained a whole internal monologue. "Does the lease allow pets?" Ned consulted his memory, which was essentially a filing cabinet. "Lease says no pets without written approval, doesn't specifically mention reptiles." "Of course it doesn't specifically mention reptiles," Gloria said. "Why would it? Why would any reasonable person feel the need to specifically mention reptiles?" Ned said nothing. He had found, over the years, that silence was a perfectly adequate response to rhetorical questions. "Okay," Gloria said. "I'll call Marcus. Can you, I don't know, write it up, so I have it documented?" "Already written," Ned said, because he had composed a single-page summary in his careful block printing before he'd even left the office. "I'll slide it under your door on the drive down Friday." Marcus, to his credit, did not lie when Gloria called. He apologized sincerely, explained that Gary had come from a rescue situation 18 months ago and that he'd been so determined to keep the snake healthy that he'd his word, perhaps over-engineered the heating setup. Gloria told him he had 2 options: get written pet approval, bring the electricity costs down to a reasonable level using more efficient equipment, and reimburse 2 months of excess utility charges, or rehome Gary. Marcus chose option 1, which was why 3 weeks later, Ned found himself sitting in Marcus's living room with a cup of coffee that was better than he'd expected, reviewing the diagrams the young man had printed from a reptile-keeping forum. "See the issue," Marcus said, unrolling the pages with the enthusiasm of a man who had finally found a sympathetic audience, "was that I bought all this equipment before I understood thermostat control. I was just running everything at maximum all the time because I was scared Gary would get cold." "You can't just run everything at maximum all the time," Ned said. "I know that now. That's not a snake problem, that's an electricity problem, that's basic load management." Marcus looked at him with the expression of a man receiving wisdom he hadn't known he needed. "Did you used to be an electrician?" "For 41 years. Marcus leaned forward. Okay, so can you look at this setup, tell me if what I'm planning makes sense?" Ned looked at the diagrams. He put on his reading glasses. He turned the pages slowly, methodically, the way he'd read blueprints in the years when blueprints were the size of bed sheets and you spread them across the hood of a truck. The new plan was, he admitted, significantly better. 1 radiant heat panel, properly thermostat controlled, 1 lamp on a timer, no space heaters. The whole thing would pull maybe 100 watts on a warm day, significantly less than the space heaters had been drawing just to keep the air between Marcus and Gary at survivable temperatures. "This'll work," Ned said. "You'll want to mount the thermostat probe here." He tapped the page. "Not here. You want it at snake level, not heat source level. You're measuring the environment, not the lamp." Marcus wrote it down. Ned drank his coffee. Gary observed from the terrarium with the serenity of a creature who had, against all odds, just acquired an elderly electrical consultant. That summer, Ned's phone became a strange hotline for animal-related electricity questions he had never once anticipated fielding in retirement. Word had gotten around, building gossip travels fast in a place where the walls are thin, and Ned is always in the hallway, that the old man in 1A understood both wiring and livestock. Mrs. Petrova in 3C asked him about her fish tanks. 3 tanks, total 200 gallons, running filtration pumps that were older than her marriage. He helped her upgrade to variable speed pumps and cut her consumption by 40%. The college student in 2B asked about grow lights. Ned decided not to ask what he was growing and focused solely on the wattage. LED panels, $8 more upfront, $60 less per month. The student called him a legend. Marcus sent him a text in August. Gary's doing great. Vet says best condition she's ever seen him in. Also bill was $67 this month. $67. Ned read the text twice, then set the phone down on the kitchen table and sat with the satisfaction of it for a moment. The particular satisfaction of a problem correctly solved, of a fault found and fixed, of a system brought back into balance. Ruthann would have loved this, he thought. She'd always said his real gift wasn't wiring, it was the way he paid attention, the way he noticed what other people walked right past. He picked the phone back up and typed back, "Good, tell Gary I said hello." He considered the message, then added, "Tell him to stop running up the bill." He sent it, stood up, and went to check the meter outside. It was spinning slowly now, the lazy, honest spin of a building living within its means. Ned nodded at it once, the way you nod at someone who's finally gotten the point, and went back inside for dinner.